He was out there, Sylvia Oxman was out there, Frank Oxman was out there, and some woman in a silver evening gown who tossed a gun overboard after the murder was out there. Perry had lots of company. They can't pin anything on him just because he was there, but they're sure going to try.
Well,
she said,
I don't know too much about it, but the chief's gone into hiding.
Gone into hiding? Drake echoed. Well, that's food for thought. Where did he go? Where is he?
I don't know. He telephoned in some instructions from a pay station. He says he may be classed as a fugitive from justice, and he doesn't want me to get implicated. He's worked out a method of communicating with me, though.
Delastreet picked up a shorthand notebook and said,
Here are his instructions. You ought to find out everything you can about the murder, and particularly, he wants you to get a photograph from the newspaper men of the fingerprints that were developed on the glass top of Greaves' desk. It seems the fingerprint men got a lot of latent prints from it. There was one print of a hand, and the chief thinks it's a woman's hand. He couldn't see it clearly. He wants to get a copy of that latent print, if he can.
Okay, what else?
The chief wants to find out exactly what Duncan's doing. Now, there's a man on the ship by the name of Arthur Manning, who works as guard and bouncer. He figures he's due to lose his job as soon as Duncan takes over because he'd sided with Grebe. The chief made a play to get Manning lined up with us, and thinks it's going to work. Manning's coming in to see me sometime after 9 this morning. I'll get in touch with you when he comes in. Now, the chief figures that by sticking up for his rights, Manning can demand 2 weeks' notice and perhaps make it stick. Duncan will probably fire him, and the chief wants you to promise him a 2-month job at a fair salary, with a chance to stay on regularly if he makes good. He's not to let anyone know that he's working for you, and he's to keep on out at the gambling ship just as long as he can. He'll make secret reports to you. The chief figures he can find out things. As soon as you've hired him, so the man's sympathies will be with you, the chief wants you to turn him inside out about just what he saw, and particularly just what Duncan was doing when Manning came into the office in response to the buzzer signal. Duncan may have been trying to plant some evidence in the chair where the chief had been sitting. Perry figures Manning might not have told all he knows about that, figuring on trying to hold his job.
Drake nodded and said, Okay, I'll put Manning to work. What else?
You're to report to me from time to time everything you found out about the case, but you're to come into the office and do it personally. You're not to use the telephone. The chief thinks they may be looking for him and may try tapping telephone lines, and
for God's sake, is he going to stay hidden if they put out a dragnet for him? Drake asked.
That's what he said.
He can't do it, Drake said positively. They'll find him. He's mixed in this thing the way it is. He was waiting in the outer office when Duncan came in and discovered the murder. You can't let him...
Paul,
Delastreet interrupted in a tone of finality.
When the chief tells me to do something, I do it. I've learned by experience that it doesn't do any good to argue with him.
Well, I want to talk with him, Drake said. He's going to be in bad on this thing. He may even be accused of murder. Delastreet nodded lugubriously.
I'll tell him you want to talk with him the next time he gets in touch with me. And in the meantime, he wanted you to give me a detailed report about what you know.
Drake said, There isn't much to report. Sylvia Oxman went out aboard the ship about half or 3/4 of an hour before Mason went out, and Frank Oxman went out a short time later. Now, that's where the brakes went against my man. He tailed Oxman right down to the wharf and up to the point where Oxman bought a ticket for the speedboat. Then he ran into some tough luck. Oxman was the last passenger aboard the boat, which was loaded to capacity. As soon as he got aboard, the speedboat shoved off, and my man couldn't possibly get aboard. He had to wait quite a while before another launch was ready to shove off. Then, when he did get out to the gambling ship, he couldn't find a trace of Oxman anywhere. He searched all over the place for 15 or 20 minutes. Finally, he spotted Oxman just boarding one of the shore launches. So he got aboard that launch and tailed Oxman to the Breeden Hotel where he's staying. I'd already stationed a plant, an operative staked out in the lobby. So if Oxman spotted his shadow, the operative in the lobby could carry on. Oxman was suspicious and waited around in the lobby for a little while to make certain he wasn't being followed. So the tail turned him over to the plant. After a while, Oxman went up to the desk and said he had some money he wanted to deposit in the hotel safe. He said it was money that belonged to someone else and he was particularly anxious to be relieved of the responsibility. So he made the clerk count it with him and checked the amount, put it in an envelope, and deposited it in the safe. The money amounted to $9,500. You tell Perry about that and see if that means anything to him. I think it will. I've put a shadow on Oxman and we'll follow every move he makes.